June 2025 marked a seismic shift in American immigration policy as former President Trump issued sweeping executive orders, escalating enforcement to levels unseen in decades. Backed by $150 billion from the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, the administration accelerated border wall construction, built new detention centers, and planned to hire 10,000 more ICE officers. The legal linchpin was the rarely used Alien Enemies Act of 1798, invoked in peacetime to reframe undocumented immigrants as national security threats. This move allowed the administration to bypass traditional legal protections, treating undocumented immigrants as enemy combatants and fast-tracking mass removals. The orders left little room for discretion, aiming to create a climate of fear that would deter migration and encourage self-deportation. The administration's aggressive approach was a direct fulfillment of campaign promises, signaling a new era of zero tolerance. With unprecedented funding and a novel legal strategy, the stage was set for a nationwide crackdown that would test the limits of federal power. A late May White House meeting set the tone. ICE was ordered to triple daily arrests, shifting from targeted enforcement to mass detentions. The new policy erased distinctions between undocumented immigrants with and without criminal records. Everyone became a target regardless of their history or community ties. ICE agents were now directed to focus on softer targets: workplaces, public gathering spots, and especially day laborer sites like Home Depot parking lots. The goal was efficiency and intimidation. Large-scale, visible raids designed to send shockwaves through immigrant communities. Agents, often masked and in tactical gear, arrived in armored vehicles, sometimes using flashbang grenades to disperse crowds. Plainclothes officers staked out courthouses, arresting undocumented immigrants immediately after mandatory hearings, a tactic widely condemned by legal advocates. The pressure to meet quotas led to aggressive, high-visibility operations, fundamentally altering the relationship between ICE and the communities it policed. The message was unmistakable: no undocumented person was safe, and the rules of engagement had changed. Legal advocates warned that these tactics would drive immigrants further underground, undermining trust in law enforcement. The administration's strategy prioritized numbers over nuance, with profound consequences for families and neighborhoods nationwide. On June 6, 2025, Los Angeles became ground zero for the new enforcement regime. Armed, masked ICE agents swept through the city, targeting day laborer sites and workplaces in coordinated military-style raids. At a Westlake Home Depot, unmarked armored vehicles descended, rounding up dozens of workers in minutes. Similar scenes unfolded across the fashion district and other immigrant hubs, leaving communities in shock and fear. The overwhelming force and speed of the raids left little chance for resistance or escape. Labor leader David Huerta was arrested while trying to advocate for workers, his detention seen as an attempt to silence dissent. News of the raids spread rapidly, prompting parents to keep children home and workers to avoid job sites. The city's vibrant immigrant neighborhoods fell silent, gripped by anxiety and uncertainty. Los Angeles, long a symbol of immigrant resilience, now felt under siege, its streets transformed by the federal crackdown. The event signaled that the administration's hardline approach would be both visible and relentless. The crackdown wasn't limited to Los Angeles. On the same day, ICE launched synchronized raids in Houston and cities across New Jersey. Home Depot parking lots and day laborer gathering spots became the epicenters of mass arrests, mirroring tactics used in California. In Houston, early morning sweeps caught construction and landscaping workers off guard, spreading panic through immigrant neighborhoods. New Jersey saw similar high-visibility raids, with families frantically seeking information about detained loved ones. The coordinated operation sent a clear message: no region was exempt from the new zero-tolerance policy. Community leaders reported surges in calls to legal aid hotlines, as fear and confusion gripped entire neighborhoods. The focus on day laborers, among the most vulnerable, underscored the administration's willingness to target anyone, regardless of criminal history. June 6, 2025, marked the arrival of a new, aggressive era of immigration enforcement, felt coast to coast. The day after the raids, President Trump escalated further, deploying over 4,000 National Guard troops and 700 Marines to Los Angeles. This unprecedented move, executed under Title X authority, bypassed the governor and placed troops under direct presidential command. The sight of uniformed soldiers patrolling city streets blurred the line between military and police, alarming critics and residents alike. The administration justified the deployment as necessary to quell unrest and protect federal agents, but many saw it as a show of force against political opposition. Defense officials threatened further military action if protests continued, deepening the sense of occupation. For immigrant communities, the presence of troops was terrifying, signaling that the conflict had escalated beyond immigration to a battle over civil liberties and state sovereignty. Los Angeles now resembled an occupied city, its residents caught between federal power and local resistance. California's leaders responded with swift condemnation and legal action. Governor Newsom and Attorney General Bonta sued the Trump administration, arguing the military deployment violated the Posse Comitatus Act and state sovereignty. Mayor Karen Bass called the move a dangerous escalation, insisting local law enforcement could handle protests without federal troops. A coalition of 22 Democratic governors issued a joint statement denouncing the president's actions as an abuse of power and a threat to states' rights. International criticism mounted, with Mexico's president condemning the criminalization of migration. Despite the backlash, President Trump doubled down, attacking state leaders on social media and hinting at invoking the Insurrection Act. The standoff deepened the constitutional crisis, transforming a policy dispute into a fundamental struggle over the balance of power. The nation watched as California and the White House clashed over the limits of federal authority. The legal battle set a precedent for how far a president could go in using military force on American soil. The conflict now centered on the very definition of American democracy. The ICE raids and military deployment ignited a wave of protests nationwide. What began in Los Angeles quickly spread to cities like Austin, Chicago, and New York, drawing thousands into the streets. Demonstrators from all walks of life, immigrant rights groups, labor unions, religious leaders, and ordinary citizens demanded an end to the crackdown. In Los Angeles, protests ranged from peaceful civil disobedience to violent clashes, with police deploying tear gas and rubber bullets. Mayor Bass imposed a citywide curfew, but defiance was widespread, leading to mass arrests and sporadic looting. Civil rights organizations mobilized legal support, challenging the legality of the arrests and military presence. The protests exposed deep divisions, stretching the city's social fabric to its breaking point. The administration's hardline agenda had transformed a regional enforcement action into a national crisis. The world watched as America grappled with questions of justice, civil liberties, and the limits of executive power. Beneath the headlines, immigrant families bore the brunt of the crackdown. Raids left children without parents, spouses without partners, and entire communities paralyzed by fear. Daily routines were upended as parents kept kids home and workers avoided public spaces, terrified of arrest. The psychological toll was immense. Families withdrew from schools, parks, and even medical care, fearing any contact with authorities. One high-profile case, a Bakersfield girl with a life-threatening illness, highlighted the human cost, as her family faced deportation and loss of medical access. Advocacy groups intervened in a few cases, but most families suffered in silence, isolated and traumatized. The raids fractured trust between immigrants and law enforcement, making communities less safe and more vulnerable. The economic fallout was immediate. Labor shortages hit construction, agriculture, and service industries as undocumented workers vanished from job sites. Projects stalled, crops went unharvested, and businesses struggled to stay afloat, revealing the essential role of immigrant labor. The aggressive tactics and military presence eroded public trust in law enforcement, not just among immigrants but across entire communities. Fear and suspicion replaced years of community policing efforts, making it harder for police to solve crimes or protect residents. Politically, the crackdown alienated moderate and independent voters, even as it energized the president's base. The raids brought the immigration debate into sharp human focus, exposing the costs of prioritizing enforcement over compassion. The events of June 2025 left deep scars, dividing states from the federal government, neighbors from each other, and citizens from their leaders. The legacy of the raids would be felt for years, raising fundamental questions about America's identity and the true cost of political ambition.